Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap. Not Monday, but it is Tuesday. Hope everybody enjoyed their day off on Monday. I myself, first day back in the office in about a week, so nice to be back in front of the screens today. But price action. I think a couple things. And first things first disclaimer in front of you, everything that we're going through is for information purpose only in this video. Everything that we're going through is for educational purposes only, or information purposes only, I should say. So yes, it gets a little bit difficult when you start to see breadth kind of slide a little bit. What I'm referring to is like the amount of stocks going up versus down. However, sometimes that's the case with technology, right? Technology has kind of run with the ball recently. Qs have been leading, and many traders are content with that, right? They would probably prefer that that the Qs and some growth stocks, and that's all that they need for the market. So I get it. You kind of have a little bit of that, of both of that, but if you try to go outside of those groups, it's harder to do that. So Nvidia, right? That's the stock. Kind of interesting when we look at the weekly chart. We're now so these are extensions away from this year's value area. We're now kind of we've gone through a lot of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we know we've got a pretty extreme move. So again, like this is our own little secret sauce using the MarketWebs in regards to the extensions. They're a little bit of like fib extensions, but we have our own criteria in here using that away from this year's value area. So you can see we've got a pretty extreme move here. So 1130 or right around like 1135 is that last extension. And I'm not calling a top in Nvidia. This has been a wonderful stock. And I think also the other thing that's like somewhat positive with this too is that it did, from basically March, this was not a great stock. It had a lot of stops and starts, and it went sideways. So now you've got that extension up, and I think that there will be more opportunities. Obviously, it's when a stock was up. What was this thing up today? 7%. I mean, that's a great move in and itself for today. So congratulations to holders. I own this in the TTG, our TTG trend portfolio. I don't have anything in that portfolio more than a 5% weight. So it's nice to have it in it, but I don't, I keep a lot of names in that portfolio. I tone it down a little bit when we're seeing a decrease in breadth as what we're seeing right now. But I'll talk more about that in just a second. So this is the this is the stock of the hour. The semis also really nice strength, continuing to move higher. So that's been where the relative strength is for now. And tech is another area, of course, right? But a little bit slower moving. But if you note, that's above all the short-term moving averages. Same thing with the Qs. The Qs, the XOK looks very similar to that Qs chart. So, for it is what it is. While price is moving above the short-term moving average, there's nothing to really overemphasize, right? Obviously, you want to be careful with moves like we saw on Thursday and make sure that you're selling into strength. That's the main thing that I try to do. Even this morning, I even though we didn't have that big of a move on the open, I'm a seller into strength. A lot of names, they'll give back their early gains, or they won't be able to hold it. That's like for a couple names for me today was app. Bring this to the right. This is app 11. I added to this last week. I think I started the position in here and I added it, right into here. So I was able to make this into a profitable trade today. And the stock was up a bit, a decent amount earlier. GEV was also a nice trade for me, but again, I was selling on the open after this move because I think I bought my purchase price was in here, and it continued to rally throughout the session. So nice move there as well. That's GE Vernova. The other one, GE, which is now GE Aerospace, looks pretty good. So again, I've been kind of touting this group FTAI had a decent move today, but that's also on the back of some management changes in the classification of the company. But aerospace has been very strong. So that's another group, and I think that we did hear a story that TSA checks were supposedly like record, in terms of like travel. So a lot of travel going on this week. And, I think that you're going to continue to see this aerospace group fairly strong. Other than that, right? So, and of course, like copper made a nice move today too. Like the metals were very strong today. So if we bring up futures here, copper futures, right in here, nice move. The metal space and the commodities were pretty weak last week. So you got a nice bounce in here. FCX, right? We talked about how there was a nice call buyer last week in Freeport McMoRan, and I actually got long some of this today. I just wasn't in front of the screens enough towards the end of last week to put the trade on, so I put it on this morning. SCCO didn't do as well, even though this is my favorite of between the two, but you get a nice little kick off the bottom of value area too, so nice spot to add a trade into some support there. The gold miners did well today. The silver miners were one of the best groups for the day, but they did not take out those highs. But regardless, if you bought some into the weakness, you were rewarded today. So that's where the strength was in crude. So crude, which I thought if we go to this XLE chart, and then I'll bring up the crude chart. But yeah, I got this is what happens, by the way. Like I think it's just good to kind of go over how this works sometimes. Like this was a really nice looking candle. I think this was not Friday, but the Friday before, right? And then you had a little bit of a move back, which is that candle's fine, held the bottom of value, and then it really started to kind of come undone here. So you have to realize that going through charts, and it's one of the more challenging things that that happens in trading, is that you'll go through, you'll do your homework, you look at your setups and you think, okay, this group might be ready. And sometimes prices will go where they want to, and some setups they do fail. So that's sometimes the frustration, putting in the work and then the setups don't work. But that's just it is what it is. That's life, and you move on, because sometimes when you do your research, you're gonna find some really good setups and they're gonna work. But other times there's gonna be some fake outs. But crude had a really nice move today, and back above. If we look at this weekly chart, right? So this is, and again, like if commodities continue to act well, then I like this. And it is what it is. I like this crude chart here, but if commodities continue to act well, I think you're going to see some more opportunities in energy. But 78.21 is the top of the value area for the year, right? And we'll see if price continues to hold that, and maybe we'll get some other areas that will begin to do well. Let me just bring up one other thing here. So here's what I'm referring to. So I put together this sector snapshot, and it's basically short-term stuff, right? I'm looking at the 520 and the 50-day moving average, and whether price is either above or below. And when something is above all three of those moving averages, I kind of call it, it's got some momentum, and it's showing some strength. So you can see what you've got here. You don't have a lot of areas. You have more areas that are flashing weak right now than you do strong. And weak just means they're below all those moving averages. So for instance, like the financials, right? And we've seen the financials be very strong this year. Oh, interesting. I'll have to check that. XLF is not below its 50-day moving average. So I may need to review this. 1 second. All right, that looks better. I was on the weekly chart, the daily chart. So again, not a ton of weakness, and this is something that you're going to want to pay attention to, because the financials have been showing some strength from time to time, and especially in here. So I mean, if we can kind of stay above this 50-day moving average, which is just, again, short-term stuff, but right now, you want to keep an eye on more areas that are showing weak than are strong. So again, we went over tech, the semis, metals and mining is also back above. So here's the XME chart, right? Back above all the short-term moving averages. Again, hasn't taken out those previous highs, but a nice move. Kind of looks like that SCCO and FCX chart that we looked at. Yeah, so I mentioned breadth, right? And I mentioned how that's a little bit of an issue right now. So if we look at areas that this is the wrong chart. Oh, that's not it. We could talk about Kava too in just a second, but here's the SPX, and this is just 4-week, by the way. We could look at 52-week as well, but 4-week gives me a sense of shorter term momentum. It's 1 month, new highs versus new lows, but you could see in the S&P there was a lot. There was 90, so 20%, just about 20% of the S&P today made 4-week new low today. That's kind of odd when you look at the S&P today, which was up barely, just about 10 basis points. But it's odd to see so many names that are making 4-week new lows. So that's what we call there's a divergence taking place, right? Even though the market is kind of grinding higher, more things are starting to break down. So we want to keep a close eye on that. So one of the things, so there's a little bit of silver lining in that, because I don't think right now it's as bad as it seems. It's still a divergence, but take a look at the names if you go through. And I did this exercise earlier, and I'll bring that up. So what I do is I take that list and I bring it in Excel and I sort it by sector, and you could kind of see what groups are doing are making the moves. And you can see there's a lot of consumer staples in here. There's a lot of healthcare. So yes, it's not what you want to see in terms of an overall number, but I would rather have those groups, like more of those defensive type groups, are the ones that are kind of breaking back to the downside. So we'll see how it kind of continues to play out, but it's something that I think that we definitely want to keep an eye on. If I move back to this, and we look at the chart too, which kind of gives a nice, now today's number is not included. Bloomberg takes a day to upload, but you don't want to see more of these the more blue tick up as the market's going, trying to push higher. You want to see that new highs are actually expanding, and you could see they're decreasing. All right, so it's a little bit of a short-term warning signal, right? And if we look at this for NASDAQ, now I don't put NASDAQ in here because in a spreadsheet, because it's just too many names. But you can kind of get an understanding when you look at the same thing, when you look at the bottom portion of the chart, and this has, of course, been moving higher, but the new highs are decreasing, right? And new lows are increasing. So again, like this could work itself out. But yeah, when I see something like this means that you should not be surprised if we start to get a little bit of a pullback. Now, it's the last week of the month, and sometimes you do see a little bit of selling at the end of the month, and then they come right back in, usually in the beginning of the month, and start to buy again, right? As pension funds tend to start buying like on the first trading day of the month, which is the 3rd. But we've got 3 trading days left here, right? Because we don't have a full week. So I would be mindful that you might get a little bit more of a pickup in volatility, right? And the VIX did finish up on the day. I know it's from a very low level. Let's go back to our spreadsheet. Right, so it's still up 4.5%. So again, we're looking at a VIX at 13, which is nothing. But I would also classify that as a bit of a divergence there too. So what are the adjustments that you make in your portfolio when you begin to kind of see a little bit of these divergences? Is kind of lighten up on some positions. And for example, like I started 2 trades today. I was, like I said, I was doing more selling in the first hour than anything else, but I will try some positions. We'll see how they work. If they're not acting well by the end of the day, I take them off. And I did that with 2 positions today. I did that with eBay. I was also looking at a VRT position too, which was down on the day. And I thought it might be a good opportunity to buy, but I did not hold on to those positions because the market's not strong enough, and especially when you look at those divergences that I mentioned. So I'm a little bit more conservative than I normally am because I'm picking up on what the market's trying to tell me, right? And that's also the same thing. Like I both in that app 11 as well as GEV. I took 2 targets in both of those today, right? I would rather lock those gains in when the market goes up like it did this morning on where the breadth isn't wonderful. All right, so that's and my view always is that the end of the months, when the first half of the month was strong, which it has been. I mean, look at what growth has done this month. It's been a great month. It's up 8%, but I see no need to push it here with the divergences that we're seeing in the market. And then if we do get a little bit of a flush out, or even just a pause, right, that might set us up for a nice beginning of the new month. All right, guys, that is it for today's recap. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.